A scathing article just dropped in regard to our New York Mets, and I believe it shows what really happened in the Mets clubhouse. We're going to break that down and a whole lot more next on Metcast. What's going on, Metcast fam? Hope all is well on this Saturday evening. If it's your first time here, make sure you like and subscribe, turn those notifications on, and if you want to get involved in the conversation, make sure to check the description below where you can become a member as our membership base continues to grow. We have so many cool things lined up in store for you guys, including working on an exclusive Discord where Mets fans like you and I can talk with us and potentially some of our guests, but that is a little bit down the line. But again, become a member. But Dan, let's get right into it. Your colleague, Mike Puma, released an article, and Mets fans, look, we got to keep it a buck here. I always try to be honest with you guys. I don't play, these political games. You got to remove the blue and orange goggles. There were issues last year. We were saying it on this show since freaking April. Something was off in the clubhouse. Now, you guys know we had multiple guests on. Everyone saying it was a normal clubhouse. But anybody who had eyes to see knew something was going on in his clubhouse, Dan. And your colleague, Mike Puma, releases this scathing article, and I believe it details a lot, and we'll get into our opinions, and believe me, I'm sure a lot of you guys listening to this are not going to like what I have to say, and maybe some of you guys might not like what Dan has to say, but at least we're going to tell you the honest truth, at least from our perspective, what we see. Dan, what's going on?
Ray, happy Saturday. We have some news outside of the Mets land. Ryan Helsley going to the Orioles, 2 years, $28 million, 14 pop. Good for him. But that's really the only news of the day. Mets news of last night, right? This article gets dropped. Mike Puma doing his job as a journalist. And before we get into anything that has to do with the article itself, a lot of people just bashing the idea that journalism and these people getting these stories, oh, why did he wait until now? This stuff isn't just household material. It isn't stuff that we, easily accessible stuff. Like, this is a good story that took a long time to put together, and people act like it was purposely dropped, on Black Friday, and
Right.
They just want clicks and all. No, it takes time to produce a story like this. So I just want to throw that out there. Secondly, this is a two-part thing. So there's two instances that happen. The first incident, we'll start with Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor. They are not friends. They are not
Really?
really, right? I'm breaking news here on Metcast. They've had that incident in the past where it was a rat or a raccoon in the tunnel in 2021. They showed it even on TV at the time of people going down into the tunnel, Lindor choking out McNeil. That was the first physical altercation between the two. Nothing else really happened until we got this report from Mike Puma. So it was June 20th of this year. The Mets are playing the Phillies in Philadelphia, and there was a play to Jeff McNeil, and I have it actually right here, and we will watch it together. And apparently there was some issue with Mr. Lindor on the whole thing. So we'll watch this together.
One hopper, McNeil grabs it, flips to second for one. Lindor does not get the double play. Took a while for McNeil to get that ball out of his glove.
Yeah, caught him off the heel, had to make sure he had to flip it, didn't want to take too long trying to overhand it to Lindor. Gave Kyle Schwarber enough time to get down.
So interesting stuff, right? We see this right here, the exchange from McNeil taking a little bit too much time. He could have backhanded it. I think there could be a case from Lindor's side where he could be justified. That is not a good throw. In Little League, they don't teach you this. I get you don't have
underhanding from 20 feet away.
Right. Either you drop back and fire a strike. If you don't have time, you literally have to give to that backhand. So McNeil didn't do that. it clearly was something that caused something between the two, where there was not physical this time, but a verbal attack from Francisco Lindor towards Jeff McNeil, and the two got into it after that June 20th game. So that was the first incident. Now, I put a lot of stock into that one specifically because, A, it could have affected the season as a whole. We have no idea. Think about the timeline, right? June 12th, the season falls apart. 8 days later, the Mets are having problems in the clubhouse. Maybe that started a spiral towards the end of the season as a whole. I'm not sure. But that was the first thing. And then the second thing Mike Puma put in the article, which got people up in arms, was the fact that there was a chilly relationship between Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. And the reason being, coming into spring training, coming into the beginning is the whole season, right? This guy signed $765 million deal to Cohen Mets. There's clearly going to be a target on his back. And there was some exchanges between the two and just a chilly relationship early on. We've since got other reporting, from other people that have said, oh, it's not as bad. But the fact that, yeah, they're different people, right? Lindor is his own person. Soto is his own person. They might not get along. And last time I checked, there's been a lot of players in history. Darryl Strawberry was not friends with everybody. Gary Carter, Keith, these guys did not get along. And there was documented fights between those guys in those days. So I think, again, winning is the best thing this Mets team can do. There is problems in the locker room. That is apparent. Whether you want to believe it or not, there's something going on behind the scenes. Why did Brandon Nimmo waive his no trade so quickly? I don't know. That could have had this
taking shots at Stearns on the way out.
So I think there's some underlying stuff that goes into this conversation, but that's the news, that there was the McNeil and Lindor thing, and then Soto and Lindor don't necessarily get along.
Yeah, so there's a few things to take away from this. Look, something like that, where we're like, oh, this is the play where it happened and they're going at it, that's typically something that boils over time. We saw last year where Iglesias is playing second base and maybe doesn't throw the perfect ball to Lindor, but none of that stuff happened. The issue is we all know about the interaction that happened the year prior. And Dan, look, people aren't going to like this, which is fine, but I'm going to give you my honest perspective, and you guys can let me know in the comments. We'll get to a lot of your guys' stuff. If you want to have your comments read, head on over to YouTube. But I'll say this. Where there's smoke, there's fire. When it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. It's something we all learned growing up. And this is not the first instant where there's been issues with Francisco Lindor. Remember there's a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to run through them really quick. At least off the top of my mind, Dan. Let me know if I miss any of them. The batting title. When did he get his car? Why did it take a year to give somebody a car that you owed them? Why did you... Remember, we traded for his best friend, Javier Baez. He wanted Baez in here. Hell, remember the reports he pushed management, Zach Scott, who might go down as one of the worst general managers in Mets history, who was trying to, impress ownership to keep his job, trades P. Crow Armstrong for Baez. And what happens 2 to 3 weeks later? Lindor's giving the thumbs down to the fans. We forget about stuff like that. Then you have Lindor and McNeil punching each other in the face in the dugout the following year. You have that issue with the batting title and Lindor supposedly owing him a car. Doesn't pay him the car for a year. Then also in this article, Dan, which I would like for you to get into, because obviously you're more familiar with it, please touch on what Mike Puma mentioned in regard to Juan Soto and Lindor.
Yeah, again, these players, they don't get along. Like there's been not many documented instances where they've gone at each other, right? But there's been times where it's been tense. There's been times where, again, like it's mixed messaging because you have multiple schools in that locker room, like friendships, cliques. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You deal with that stuff in middle school, but
sure,
the fact that Soto had the opportunity to basically say that Lindor is the leader, and he chose to say that Marte was the leader. And a lot of us in the moment said, that feels weird. It feels like a shot at Lindor. Well, it was. And this stuff kind of proves it. Again, there's no real documented stuff in there that are talking about, on May 15th, Lindor called Soto a bad baseball player. And, none of that. But there was definitely that tenseness. It really was felt from a clubhouse source, guys that are in that locker room every day. So, again, I think if it's felt by a guy like that, then I think that it's felt by the players. And I think Lindor is a leader. I think he can be a leader of men. But when it comes to this conversation of captain, it really all blends together. Is Lindor a captain? And when you have Soto not believing it, I don't know if the other players do. So it's a lot that goes into a conversation like this. It's a sensitive conversation. A lot of people don't think this is even news, and honestly, it might not be, but it's definitely a story that is now confirmed that we were always talking about just as speculation, like, we think that the Mets locker room is off, or nobody's really been inside to tell us. And Keith Hernandez says they don't let him go near the players anymore. Like, we were always waiting to hear if there was something factual, and now we have it. So, yeah, is it going to be the downfall of the New York Mets for the next 15 years that Soto's here? No. But as long as Lindor's here, I think it's just something to kind of put on the back of our minds. And is he really a captain of this team?
And there's a fifth instance that we could all talk about too. How about the fact that Adam Ottavino said that it irked Brandon Nimmo that Francisco Lindor was potentially being named captain? That came out prior to the trade. So now not only are you hearing stuff with McNeil, with Soto, now with Nimmo, and I know a lot of people are saying, it's garbage, all this stuff. Look, I've known Mike Puma for a while. The guy knows his stuff. He doesn't make things up. You don't hear the Mets coming out and denying this stuff. Plus, a lot of it prior to this year was public knowledge. We all knew McNeil and Lindor fought in the tunnel. We all knew about Lindor not paying up on his bets, that it took forever. And they asked him why, and he smiled and laughed it off. We all knew something was wrong in the locker room last year. And I get it. Winning cures all. I agree with you guys. Totally agree. But one thing I can't stand is when fans are dishonest. Or not even just fans, people in general. And my true feeling is, it's good to see when guys are getting along. It's good to see when we're 21 games over. And a lot of people say, well, Ray, I don't care about this. It's garbage. It's fake news. I don't care, win a World Series. The reason why we're bringing this up tonight was because we just watched arguably the worst collapse in New York Mets history. A team that was 21 games over 500, 7+ games up in the standings. In the wild card, I imagine it was double digits, and a team that collapsed like we have never seen. And we could blame the pitching, we could blame the bullpen, but we can't also forget that we couldn't score a run for 2 months. Let's not forget, Francisco Lindor was off to a red-hot start and did not hit for almost 2 full months. What was he, 1 for 56 at one point? Something like that. It was right there. Mm-hmm. And every excuse was made. And when you hear about leadership and captaincy, I understand. People are going to say, well, captains don't matter in baseball. But they can in New York. David Wright was different here. Aaron Judge is different in the Bronx. Derek Jeter's different in the Bronx. We talk about someone the team could rally around. I'm sure Pete would like to be captain. But when you have a guy like Brandon Nimmo, the longest, 10-year Met, drafted back in 2011, it's 2025, Dan, leaking out to former teammates that, hey, I'm not happy about this captain thing. That could cause struggle in a clubhouse. And look, winning cures all. I get it. But what happens is when you start to lose, things start to fracture, guys go to swings. This is not the first time. Like, that's what I can't get with fans. They're like, I don't care. I just want to win. How many guys are throwing punches on the Dodgers? I mean, for me personally, it's not something I like to see. And I think any chance Lindor thought he was going to be captain of this team has gone out the window now, which in the grand schemes of things won't mean anything. But I wonder. I'm not totally sold. This is a conspiracy theory. I'm well aware of it, Dan. I am not totally sold that Brandon Nimmo wasn't open to a change of scenery because these statements came out prior. And I know everyone says, oh, well, Ray, look at the timing of the article. This article is months or weeks, not if months in the making. Mike Puma didn't wake up yesterday and say, I'm going to write an article about the Mets destroying everyone inside of there. It's well sourced. And a lot of people like to say, well, look at the players that have left. Brandon Nimmo's the lead. Guys, are we just going to ignore that 80% of the coaching staff just got fired or let go? The first base coach, the third base coach, the hitting coach, the assistant hitting coach, the assistant pitching coach, the current pitching coach, literally the bench coach. Literally every single coach was either fired or let go outside of Carlos Mendoza. They have relationships over time. Go look in the past. Find me when Mike Puma was wrong. And maybe I'll concede to a lot of the haters. But I refuse to not take off the orange and blue glasses and look at what's in front of me. Be able to make my own well-educated decision. Take the glasses off. Now, I'm not saying this will have an impact on the offseason, but here's what I'm saying. The questions will be there. Our spring training now potentially goes from what acquisition did you get to, hey, Lindor, do you have issues with anybody else in the dugout? If McNeil's here, what was that relationship like? Like, these are the things I'm talking about. You're going to have other teammates needing to answer that. Hey, Soto, did you have issues with Lindor? What was your issues with? Did you have a relationship with Jeff McNeil? Clearly, they didn't see eye to eye. Do you feel Brandon Nimmo wanted out? That's the narrative that will now get pushed in spring training. And I'm hoping it ends at spring training, but it's coming. And now you're trying to usher in these kids, and that's another thing. It's easy to say you want a locker room to all get along. And not everybody gets along. But you have a lot of kids potentially on this team that need to do damage. You want their psyche focused on the field. If Carson Bench is going to start in center field, he's a rookie. McLean, technically, still a rookie. Jonah Tung, technically, still a rookie. Brandon Sproat, a rookie. A brand new bullpen. Brett Beatty in his third year. Mark Vientos needs to focus on crap on the field rather than the questions he's going to get about off the field. This is a veteran team, but it's not a total veteran team. There's a chance the Mets have 3 starting pitchers on this staff that have never thrown more than 55 innings in a season. How about David Peterson? He's going to get those questions. Literally everybody's going to get those questions. And yes, they're professionals. They should know how to deal with it. But when you're ushering kids and a new thing, I mean, what if we turn around and another McNeil's traded and then more stuff comes out? That's what I'm talking about, Dan. Part 2 comes out. Part 3 comes out. Part 4 comes out. McNeil in his press conference. Thank God I got the hell out of there. It's something we need to consider. And guys, I understand this may not be for everybody, this exact episode. I respect that. But I try to cover everything Mets. That's what we do here. We try to bring you all the news and our honest takes. You're going to see a lot of Look, I've already had it. And I'll remain nameless. But other podcasts have reached out to me and say, Ray, you're too hard on the team. That's because I don't take money from people paying. I refuse to. We refuse to. No one's going to shape the narrative here. I promise you guys that. And I've gotten that a lot. People questioning our sources, putting out the Alonso contract. It's so like, I don't know, juvenile to an extent. I understand it. It's like a high school. But these guys are together a lot. I mean, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, practically 8 months traveling all over the country. And then you have, I hate to say it, I'll put it out there. You have politics that get involved in things like this. It just is what it is. Dan, you're sitting next to somebody that you may not know so well, maybe from a different country, maybe from a different state, Midwest, California, New York. Texas, hell, Canada, the DR, Korea, or whatever it is, stuff gets involved with that. And when us as Met fans, we're looking for a leader. And I know you don't need a captain. I'm not saying that we do. I want to put that out there. But to see the turmoil in this clubhouse when you have guys, Lindor, Alonso, Soto, Nimmo, McNeil, all these guys are veterans. This stuff shouldn't happen. The fact that it happened so early, and then we had this tank, Dan, it goes to show you it's a rudderless thing. And this is also an issue. It leads back to Carlos Mendoza. Said it at the end of the season. When you bring in and I'm not saying he can't be a good coach down the line, but when you bring in a first-time manager that has never played the game at the major league level, there's a certain respect you need to earn. Boone across town was a player. I feel like if Carlos Beltran was in here, he's a player. He could relate. It's not easy to say, hey, Soto, step into my office. We got to have a talk. And he's going to look at you and say, who the F are you? Stuff like that happens. Lindor, who are you? They take it differently. And that's an issue that a good manager like Buck Showalter or, a Joe Girardi or even Boone, I think, is a pretty damn good manager. You hope Gibby would get involved, but even Gibby skipped town. Why would a veteran bench coach like Gibbons, who had, minor success in Toronto, has a cushy job with the Mets, step down? Why would Anthony Richardson, who got offered to double or triple his salary, say, screw you, I am out of here? You can't tell me it doesn't relate. Now, we're not 100% sure, but again, take those blue and orange goggles off. You had Chavez going after Mets fans on Instagram in the middle of the effing season. Dan, it's something we spoke about, a rudderless ship last year. And this just showed more proof. Why would you think Mike Puma, out of all things to make up in this world, would make something like that up when there was a ton of evidence there already? Richardson leaving, Chavez attacking fans, hell, Carlos Mendoza's son leaking the Soto contract out on Instagram. Like that stuff, everything that shouldn't happen, that wouldn't be allowed to happen under a veteran coach, happened last year. And look, I'm just like you guys. I had the blue and orange goggles on when we were in the playoffs, winning games. It was a facade. And I'm grown up enough to realize that that was wrong. Plain and simple. You got a lot out of guys who played over their heads, and we expected to run it back, and it crashed and burned. That's why I look to bring in more veterans here. That's why, and I don't think it would happen, I would be in on a JT Realmuto. And I know we have Alvarez, but clearly we need, and that's why I'm excited for Simeon. As long as he's not the big get, Dan, you're bringing in a Gold Glover, a guy from everybody that I've spoken to, and I'm sure you've seen as well, is a business-first person. And we saw the rebuttal today, Dan, a former Fox reporter saying, well, Lindor says Soto keeps to himself. He's not a hype guy, but we don't need personality everywhere. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Sometimes you need guys that are all about business. How many post games did we sit here, fam? And yes, you guys all know we're here for the post games. How many times did we sit here and me say, second and third, game-winning run at second base, and Lindor takes strike 3 right down the middle, and he's smiling, joking it up with the catcher? That rubs some guys wrong. You have Juan Soto trying to be an all-time great. You have pitchers on one-year contracts that are looking for wins. A team that was looking for wins. And sometimes you're going to run people the wrong way, but I'll get to Dan's comments. I know I was long-winded there. I had to get it out there. Let me know what you guys think of the comments. We'll get to Dan's comments, and then we'll get to some of your guys' comments as we continue throughout the show.
Yeah, no, right. I appreciate it. And I let you get that off your chest. It's one of those stories. It's one of those things people don't want to believe. People don't believe. People just feel it is what it is, right? Winning cures all. And I'm always going to go back to that. I think no matter what the Mets do, If they're winning 100 games, you're not going to hear that the locker room was a problem. So it's going to be one of those hot button, conversation stories. But Mike does a great job. He's done a great job for many years, and I'm always going to give him the respect that he deserves. Those questions that you want answered, we'll find out hopefully at spring training, whether we're the ones asking or other people asking. There will be definitely those questions that pop up. A lot of it is just playing in New York. A lot of it is, hey, the Mets were supposed to have a really good year and they didn't. And what was the reason why? And that's all we're trying to figure out. And I think it's a little bit of both. It's always going to be bits and pieces. The locker room, the players didn't perform, the managers had bad decisions. That's always going to be a factor. So I think across the board, the Mets were at fault. Yeah, the Mets could have been a lot better this year, but there was reasons why. And was it that Jeff McNeil hated Lindor and Lindor and Soto don't get along? Did that add 10 losses to the loss column? I have no idea. But it's a very interesting story, and it's one that we're definitely going to keep an eye on as the offseason moves on. But we're going to move on past it. We're going to move on. You said Semien makes a lot of sense for this team. I'm happy that he's a Met. Think he's going to fit in well. JD Realmuto makes sense. I mean, we don't like to think that Alvarez is a guy that could be traded, but you don't even have to trade Alvarez. You could just bring in another catcher and potentially say, hey, I want to see what I can get out of Alvy here. They did that with Tyrone Taylor on a lesser extent. We claimed off the Pirates waiver wire Ji-Hwan Bae, one of these underrated moves that people probably honestly forgot about till I just brought him up. He was a guy that is an outfielder for the Pirates. He basically put pressure on Tyrone Taylor. A month later, Tyrone Taylor is, tendered a contract. Yeah, I would have think that, there's going to be guys across the board that are going to push each other. Jose Castro, wasn't he the minor league outfield signing we just got a couple days ago? Another one. Just names into the pile of names that can help push other guys be better. And when that name was Brandon Nimmo last year, as we talked about in previous lives, that name grows stale. So in the same way that Nimmo was petitioning to be captain, make no doubt about it, he had the house bought in Port St. Lucie. He said he was hoping to have people over. Some people call that posturing and say, oh, he just wanted to be captain and he's sitting here doing that because he wants an angle. No, I think Nimmo thought that he was going to be that guy. And at the end of the day, I side with you, Ray. I don't think the Mets need a captain at all. I think it's just a bunch of fodder for the fans. There's two official captains in the game of baseball. It's the Yankees with Aaron Judge. It's the Royals with Salvador Perez. There's all unofficial guys. Marcus Semien was the unofficial captain of the Rangers. Now it's Corey Seager or it's Wyatt Langford. Like, you pick a new guy to be that guy in the clubhouse. So for the Mets,
like hockey.
Right. It's just unofficial captains. If Lindor's the unofficial captain, that's who he is. But to some people, he's not. So I don't know. And the Nimmo stuff, I see the comments. How do I know that? Well, because it came from Brandon Nimmo's mouth. I don't know if you guys think I just get up here and talk out of my behind. I don't, and I never have. So I say things with intent to bring you guys stories and to be here and just be on top of the Mets. I think we do a pretty good job. So, we'll see what happens this offseason. But Realmuto is an interesting name for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, we're going to get some of your guys' comments. As we move throughout, one thing that Dan and I were talking about was ranking maybe our top 2 or 3 starting pitchers that we would like for the Mets to acquire, trying to be realistic here. Because, look, Skubal sounds nice. I'd be shocked, absolutely shocked, if Stearns were to pull off a deal like that. So that's also coming down the pike as well. Any New York Mets news, you guys know where to be. With that said, let's get some of your comments. Zach and Burns, appreciate you guys. 2 brand new members of the podcast. As always, you guys know you want to get your stuff heard live with our guests. That's the best way to do it. We'll start it off with Randy. One of our members says, I don't care, win a World Series. A lot of people are going to have that. A lot of people are going to say that. Andre says, this is the crap that goes on and gets reported when the team falls apart like the Mets did. If they were winning, they would never get out there. It was clear they were clubhouse issues. Well, yeah, my biggest thing, Andre, is a lot of people, when you asked around, they just straight up denied it, Dan. How many people did we speak to? Oh, it's a regular clubhouse. I'm like, maybe they were good at hiding things behind closed doors. And one other thing, I wonder how involved Steve Cohen is day to day with these guys, Dan. I wonder if he's trying to handle a lot of it. That's something that the Mets talked about for how long? The family environment. Hell, players were saying they wanted to come here and experience that. Jesse Winker spoke about that's why, he had better offers out there. He wanted to come back to you with the Mets because of the family environment, the way they took care of families, something Soto mentioned in his presser. I mean, it's just interesting when you're hearing about things like that.
Yeah.
Scott says, I don't care if Soto and Lindor don't get along. No, not everyone gets along with their coworkers. I agree. The issue for me is when Brandon Nimmo saying stuff behind closed doors, McNeil saying stuff behind closed doors, Soto saying stuff behind closed doors, because as we all know, no one wants to work in a toxic work environment. And I'm not saying that's what it is, but when you're traveling with somebody, sleeping in the same hotel, going out to dinner, going to different cities, West Coast trips. I mean, these guys spend more time with their fellow teammates than probably their own families for 7 to 8 months. That's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Zach says, I don't know, guys. Lindor, too lighthearted for Soto and some grinders, or is Soto a baby and can't win the clubhouse on his own? Mets drama. Could be either or, but there's a common denominator. Somebody wrote that. Somebody wrote, who was it? I'm going to find it right here. I just seen it 1 second ago. I got to find that comment. I know I started, so it's around here somewhere. Metrophonic says, Puma private access moved to janitor's closet. I see some people posting things like that. Puma, look, he knows his stuff. It just is what it is. Andre says, when Soto called Marte captain, that's all you need to know about how Soto feels about Lindor. McNeil has to be off this team, even if it's a salary dump. I think he's got value. So, people are going to like that. Zach follows up. I really just don't understand why McNeil is still on this team. Just release him. Remember, Lindor got shipped out of Cleveland, and they were competitive in the playoffs every single year. I think that was more of a salary issue. Take it for what it is.
Yep.
Taranita says, can you guys drive McNeil to Seattle or somewhere else ASAP? One thing that's really interesting to me, Dan, is we keep hearing about, it's McNeil. It's McNeil. Like, I get the fiery purpose of McNeil, but I'm not totally sold that it's just straight up McNeil. I mean, it's now, I'm not saying he has issues with Soto, and I think that might get blown out of proportion just a little bit. I'm not saying he has issues with him, Dan, but the Brandon Nimmo comments, that's what rubs me the wrong way, because Brandon's the guy that's like, never says anything to anybody. Supposedly the great guy, puts his head down, hardworking, has the foot injury, plays despite it, still has the power numbers, still a very solid number 5 hitter. And it's like, well, he's taking shots at David Stearns on the way out. You got to wonder if other things were boiling over, because that just doesn't sell me that everything was okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that go into a clubhouse environment. I think in general, you're always dealing with different personalities. There's going to be people who don't like each other in any workplace, as you mentioned. I think, again, the McNeil stuff, the fact that he's linked to this story the way that he is and the light that he's framed in, the Mets wouldn't let this story get out if they didn't think that Jeff McNeil was going to be a trade candidate. Arguably, I mean, I could check my fake watch here. It's probably the next 72 hours. Pretty soon. They've been trying to trade him for weeks. This story comes out. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together. Again, I don't bat 1,000. I don't think any of us do. But I could sit here and believe a world where, hey, we're talking about McNeil not being on this team in 2026 because of things like this. I don't know if it's a general, though the clubhouse itself is fractured. I don't think that's the case, but just keep shaving off some of these pieces that maybe didn't fit to the bigger picture. And McNeil, I think, is definitely one of them. Definitely.
Some of these comments are funny, man.
Yeah, it's one of those spaces people, it's one of those issues where fans don't want to have these conversations, and I get it. They're uncomfortable conversations. We don't really want to be talking about the clubhouse chemistry either. We just want to win games. That's all we've ever wanted.
But when it's a national story, Dan, we got to cover it. I tell you guys all the time on the recordings and lives, we're going to try to keep you guys informed with unbiased opinions. I'll put it that way. No one's going to say, hey, say this for me or push this narrative. And believe me, it's happened. BG says, how many of you hang out with your coworkers? I respect mine, but I don't like them like that. What's the difference? Big difference. You're on a plane with them. You're traveling for weeks at a time with them. I'm sure you see your family more than you see your coworkers. And also, by the way, they're in I don't know what you do for a living. I don't know what a lot of you guys do for a living, but in my profession, if you don't perform, you get fired. And these guys are trying to win titles, become Hall of Famers, leave a legacy behind. And that's a part of winning. And when you lose, things become fractured. And sometimes things are irreparable. Dan, is it safe to say right now, would you say Lindor and McNeil's relationship is not repairable? It's been going on for years. And that's how I feel. I know how you feel, Dan. I love your response.
Yeah, it's tricky. It really is, Ray. I think, again, you hit the nail on the head. It's not anything, again, we should really be making more of than it is, but it's just crazy. I don't have words, Ray. I don't.
That's just life. I'll tell you one thing. Every single business is about results. Steve Cohen making money with the Mets. There's a reason why. Look, he's willing to lose money now. He didn't become a billionaire losing money, but that casino's going up. Phase 3 is passed. He's going to make billions off of that. And one thing I brought up in Dan's space the other night, people love to forget this. Well, Cohen's losing all this money. He doesn't care about money. Oh, yeah? Wait till this new TV contract comes out. Remember, he does not own SNY. Look at what the Dodgers. What did we say the other day? Well, how much did the Dodgers make?
300 something million, might even be more, way more. I might be close to.
That's why people say, "Oh, the Dodgers are losing money." Yeah, okay. So here we go. In the Dodgers right now have a 25-year television contract that runs through 2038. It was signed back in 2013. They receive $333 million per year. Per year. Looking at it right here. Per year. $333 million. Right now, Steve Cohen gets a whopping gazoon-tight. 0. Absolute 0. That's coming down the pike as well. I could see Cohen getting $500 million a year. Look at where the Mets TV ratings were just a few years ago, before Soto, before the 101. Fans are coming out 3 million strong last year. That's why Cohen's willing to spend now, because he knows I invest now. Younger kids get involved. Kids that are 10, 11, 12 years old whose parents may not be totally invested in baseball. I want them to root for the Mets. If the Mets are good, they're more likely to move to that, root for them. Why do you think so many people that are Dodger fans? Why do you think so many people are Chicago Bull fans? You see the Jordan jerseys. You see the Pippen jerseys. You see, you go all over the world. Why, when you go to Japan and Korea, they're all wearing New York Yankee hats? Because winning spreads. People want to be a part of it. Why do you think Ohtani goes to LA? Why do you think all those guys go to LA? Why do you think Yamamoto goes to LA? Besides being closer to home for the Japanese players, but the other players, Betts signed there right away. Freddie Freeman wanted to go there. It's because they want to win. Winning attracts. Winning attracts not just fans, but it attracts players as well. You see it in every sport. Look at football. Go back to 2010. Every single older player wanted to be a New York Jet under Rex Ryan. They took less money. The fans were there. That's just what happens. So that's why I'm like, that's why Cohen's willing to lose money now, because he knows he'll make money in the long term, building a fan base that's consistent and returns to the ballpark.
Yeah, and it goes back to that topic of the players spending a lot of time together too. Like they just want to win, and that's why it's easy when you win. And you talk about the game, you talk about the good parts of the game, and usually when you win, you have more good things to talk about than when you lose. And that's what the Mets probably fell into a little bit last year as well, where every day it felt like another loss, another backbreaking loss. How many times last year did we sit here and say, "Oh, this was the worst loss of the year"? Then a week later, "Oh, this one was the worst loss of the year." It just kept piling up, and that probably built on the players too. Steve Cohen, yeah, you're right. I mean, the fact that this casino's done is probably a lot of pressure off his shoulders. He's probably a lot happier now, and hopefully he's in a better mindset to spend some money not on toilets and selling those for $12 million a pop. Like, I want to bring in good players, and Steve Cohen wants to win, and he's willing to spend, and especially with the TV contract coming in and all of these things that are coming in for the Mets. Like Metropolitan Park's going to be beautiful. I can't wait to go to Mets games once that's done. But it's going to be a tricky 2 years because the parking area situation at Citi Field's not going to
take transit.
You're going to have one parking garage basically as everything's being built for the Citi Field parking people, and then the NYCFC stadium too for the soccer. You're going to have all these people trying to flood into one parking garage who get assigned parking spaces. It's going to be madness for the next couple of years. But once it's all done, it's going to be great. And I hope we have a good team at that point. I hope Steve Cohen doesn't forget now to spend on the players, because that's a big part of this too. And if you lose Pete and you lose Nimmo, we've had those conversations. I don't know if fans are going to show up to the ballpark next year. I really don't.
I'll tell you one thing. Like, look, Pete Hoffman said it on our live. DeMayo said it on our live. Harper said it on the live. They all thought Pete was gone, and I'm right there with them. But I will say this, man. The more I look at this lineup, you cannot sell Juan Soto next year as a retool. We've been retooling for how long now? We were told 2024 was a retool. We all accepted it. We went on a magical run by backing into the final wild card spot. Let's not forget that. It's not like we ran away with the division. We had some clutch hitting. By the way, smacking the hell out of Frankie Montas, who David Stearns could not wait to sign last offseason and give a 2-year contract. But it's like, that was supposed to be the retool. Let's not forget that. So it's like, you got to think there's an effective plan here. But if Pete walks, even if you bring in a Cody Bellinger, is that replacing Pete's offense? A team that couldn't hit for 2 months last year? I know we're kind of getting off topic here, but those are big concerns to me. You know, like, what is going to happen with Pete with first base? You're really sold that Ryan Clifford's the future? If you are, then you got to trust Stearns. But the future ain't next year. That's probably 2027.
Yeah, we can't keep putting off the years. That's something too, right? Like, you have players getting older. You have players, again, out of their primes. Lindor. There's a lot of things where there's a lot of reasons to go in for it this year. A lot of Mets fans sit back and say, "Oh, I'll wait till 27 when I can go sign Skubal and do all these things in free agency." You're 100% right. I want to be in on Skubal next year, but I don't want to be in on Skubal next year with the same rotation that we have now. So that Hector Gomez report, I don't know if we really touched on it much, but the 6 years for 200 for Framber, there's a reason for it. I don't think the Mets are going up to 6 years, but the Mets understand we need to have a rotation in place. So next year, when we do pony up 400 to 450 million,
he's not the only guy there.
Right. You have a McLean, but you also have a Framber Valdez, and you also have a Michael King. That makes a lot softer.
Yeah, potential Donatung and Sproat another year.
Right. That's the goal.
Yeah, let's get to a few more of these. Somebody, Andre asks, good question. Would the Mets consider trying to trade Lindor? I'm not an advocate for it, because I'll tell you why. It's easy because we've been spoiled with Lindor, but don't forget what we had before him. I'm talking after Jose Reyes, the Andres Jimenez, the Med Rosarios of the world. And when I look at Lindor's contract, he's got 6 years at $32 million a year at age 32. If he's going to give you the production that he has been giving, the value's there. What I'm trying to say with this whole situation is maybe us putting those captaincy expectations on him because he was the best player on our team for a long time is simply just unfair. Just be one of the guys. Like, don't try to be the leader. Like, we've seen that a lot. Puts his arm around the pitcher, puts his arm around the players, joking in the clubhouse. Fine, be yourself. But I think that narrative that fans love to push, including myself, guys, I'm a fan just like you guys, putting that narrative that, Lindor's got to be the captain. Lindor's got to be the next captain. Will he be named captain at David Wright's retirement? Shout out to David Wright in his jacket. Love this thing. Got it on his retirement day. But, we're so hungry for, David Wright's finally retired. We need a new captain. And for me, now that I've had time to digest this, and maybe you guys think different, let me know. I think a captain's got to be homegrown. I really do. Salvador Perez, Derek Jeter, David Wright, Aaron Judge. The only captain that was probably not homegrown, Big Papi, that I could think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's others out there in recent memory at least. But for me, a captain would be Pete Alonso. But I'm not sure that's his personality. And I think he's okay with that. Like, we never heard any rumblings about him not being happy. And he's arguably going to be the best ever positioned homegrown player we have ever had come through this organization when all things are said and done, especially if he gets a 6-year contract. He might be the first position homegrown Hall of Famer to stick with this team his entire career. Like, there's a real spot at that, Dan.
Yeah. That's a thing that's gone to the wayside in sports in general, right? Like, players just don't stick around with one team for their whole careers. And when they do, it's really cool. I wish more guys did it. And that's why I have a lot of respect. I mean, David Wright, one of one. You really did it. Ed Kranepool would be another one. Like, there's really not many. And for Pete, you have that ability. That's a special thing. And I hope that he thinks about those things because they do matter and they can add years to a contract. If, again, the Mets haven't been fair to Pete, that's where he comes up short. And I feel like, again, they always give him these team-friendly deals. Pete just needs a market. He can get a 4-year, 5-year deal from the Mets. That's what a lot of these guys are looking for, right? With the lockout coming, they're looking to really get stability and security for long-term contracts. Dylan Cease signs a 7-year. Josh Naylor signs a 6-year or 5-year. It makes a lot of sense. So Pete wants to be here. Hopefully he can be one of those rare guys that finishes his career in one uniform because baseball just doesn't have many of them anymore. And sports as a whole doesn't have many. So
right.
We thought Brandon Nimmo, right? He would have been one of those guys, but no. So
rumblings were there, though, and it's funny because I had people on this very podcast say, Ray, stop being conspiracy theorists. Well, I was right. And guys, I see some people saying, well, look at all the Mets captains we traded for. That's why I said in recent memory. I'm talking of the last 25 years, 30 years. Those guys, that's a different day and age there. But I do respect that opinion. The Carters, the Hernandez, all of those guys. Let's keep it going. Got a few more questions. Zach says, when you're a captain, you cannot make excuses, period. Frank says, Mendoza lost control of the clubhouse. He should have been fired. I agree with that. Hey, I might eat my words next year, but I do agree with that at the end of the day.
I disagree with that.
Yep.
I don't know how we can sit here and say this is Mendy's fault, right? Like, Mendy now has a second chance. I think the players had to exit meetings as any team does, right? What did Tom Thibodeau in? Many players at the Knicks exit meetings, particularly OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns, players of that ilk, maybe Mikal Bridges, sat here and said, "Oh yeah, Thibs, we don't think he's the guy. We need a new coach." The Mets could have did that with Mendy, and I think they really had his back. And the Mets said, "Okay, we'll give Mendy another season, and we'll just surround him with good players," because Mendy clearly can't make a lot of these decisions on his own. He has a tough time. That second-year adjustment wasn't as smooth as a lot of us thought it would be from a managerial perspective. He is a guy that definitely can once he's surrounded with the right guys. Kai Correa is his right-hand man in the locker room and in the dugout. That's going to be huge for the in-game decision. So I think Mendy now has the support of the team, which he always had. And now he has the coaching staff to surround it. So, again, like we can always blame Mendy anytime anything goes wrong. I always call him Mendy. Carlos Mendoza, we can always blame him, but that's not the smart way because I think he's a pretty good manager. A lot of people hate when I say that. I think Mendy's here for a long time. I really do.
I hope you're right because I don't want managerial change, and I'm hoping this too. First-year manager last year, second year this year. Hopefully he learns from it. You need that's the difference between a bench coach with the Yankees and the actual manager. You need to be able to have tough, honest conversations with your players. I don't know if Mendoza does that. It could be, it could not be, but those locker room issues. I was told this when Mendoza was hired. He's not a analytic full guy. He's passionate. He will let a player know when they're wrong, when they're right. He takes care of business. For me, this locker room got out of control, Dan, last year. It was so obvious. Some of the things that were being said should not have been said. And I think a lot of people, look, New York's a pressure cooker. We'll let you have it when you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Having a catastrophic, trade deadline the way that David Stearns did really hurt this team. Ryan Helsley, Rogers, Mullins was atrocious. You're a team that's 21 games up at one point, and your big relief in the position department is Cedric Mullins? Really? Like, I understand it would have cost a lot, but to me, relieving the bullpen, yeah, that shows I'm all in, but Stearns was not 100% all in on last year. That's just my
You're right.
The all-in moves were there to be made. You wanted to load this bullpen, you give up a Carson Bench and you go get the closer on the Phillies. Under control, you pair him with Diaz, you have the best 8-9 that MLB might have ever seen, but we didn't. We went with the Helsley, the guy who can't throw strikes, the guy who signed today a 2-year contract, the guy with a 5 walks per 9 rate, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, there's going to be those in-game decisions going back to last year. I think you look at, again, the 7 pitches Edwin Diaz leaving him in and then taking him out was definitely weird. Not leaving in Sean Manaea long enough when he clearly had the stuff towards the end of the year. There was always those decisions. I think, again, those decisions are going to be fixed. From a GM perspective, I think David Stearns has learned his lesson. He's been open about that. He has said he takes this year on his chest. He's accountable. He has learned that the trade deadline is going to be different year to year, and I appreciate that, and he's going to change his mindset. I don't know what next year's trade deadline is going to look like. I hope it looks like Tarek Skubal being a New York Met. That's what I have envisioning happening. But we have to see. A manager has to manage players, right? Like, does Mendy do a good job of that? I couldn't tell you. I know the things that he does well, and that's putting a good team out there and hopefully learning from his mistakes. I think batting Brett Beatty is just another example where he would produce against a lefty and then not be in the next day, or produce against a righty and not be in versus the lefty. That was frustrating. So I think all those decisions are going to be fixed in 26 for sure.
Dan, another thing we could address, some trades you've been throwing out there, and I know you're a big fan, so we'll get into it. Kev, trade Vientos Alvi for Kwan. Everybody loves to hear Stephen Kwan. Let's dive. Let's take that leap of faith, my friends. Let's look at the stats as we always like to. 272, 11 home runs, OPS of 705. If you guys thought Cedric Mullins stinks, go get Stephen Kwan because he's right there with him. He stinks. I know Dan likes him defense-wise. Very good defender. You want to tell me he's a future center fielder? Okay, but he stinks. Does. His on-base percentage is .330 for a guy with 0 pop. And for what it was, you want to tell me you're going to get, you're trying to win next year. You want to put Tucker and left to him in center. Fine. I'll take it if that's going to cost you bench. But I think bench is going to be special. I think you need power in this lineup. And a lot of it depends if Pete leaves. If Pete leaves, you cannot add a guy like Kwan to this roster.
Yeah, I want to make it clear. Kwan's not a great player. He's not a player that is going to hit consistently in the 800s for his OPS. In fact, I don't believe he's ever hit in the 800s for his OPS. But what Kwan gives you is stuff that David Stearns loves. Versatility in the outfield, really good defender, a decent arm, good wheels, and he could be your leadoff hitter. Now, the reason I put that caveat in there, I think it's much bigger than we realize. We don't, besides Francisco Lindor, have a leadoff hitter. Last year, they put Nimmo in the leadoff hole a couple times. It worked out pretty well. I mean, he still doesn't walk to the point where we want him to be. But again, Nimmo was suitable. Lindor's the guy who's the leadoff hitter right now. I like the idea, and Ray and I have been very open to this here on Metcast. We want to move Lindor out of the leadoff spot permanently. And that was a conversation last year. Going into 2025, picture yourself as a Mets fan. If someone said to you, hey, we're going to move Lindor off the leadoff spot, you would have said, dude, you're crazy. How could you do that? He's our leadoff hitter. I think more fans are open to that idea now. So with that being said, trade for Kwan potentially, put him as your leadoff hitter. You could have Soto batting second. You could have Lindor batting third, switch hitter batting third. You bring back Pete, you have him as your 4-hole hitter. You need a DH, right? That's where the Kyle Schwarber stuff can make a lot of sense for this Mets team. Imagine Kyle Schwarber protecting Pete Alonso. And then you roll with the regular guys. 6 could be Simeon, 7 could be Beatty, 8 could be Alvarez, 9 could be Bench. That's not bad, man. That's not bad. So Stephen Kwan, I know, I like what he brings to the table in terms of the stuff. He's a baseball player, and he works out at bats, and he slides hard into bags, and he turns, singles into doubles and can score on a double when he's at first. Like, those are the things that really excite me, and I think they excite David Stearns. So that would be something I would put out there just for you Met fans, of course, to kind of think about Stephen Kwan to Queens.
It's what you call it. I'm looking at it right now. John, thanks so much. We appreciate that. John with a super chat says, if Pete's DH, Ryan O'Hearn is a good option at first. Look, O'Hearn, he's a free agent?
Yeah.
281, 17 homers over 471 games. That's pretty damn good. 803 OPS, 125 OPS plus with a 437 slug. I don't know how his defensive metrics play. First base, right fielder. He's 32 years old, maybe a short-term contract. I mean, this guy is pretty damn consistent when you look at it. 2023, he had 289. The power numbers aren't always there. He's also not, he must be hurt a ton. Look at the plate appearances, 145, 368, 494, and then last year, 544 at bats, 21 doubles, 17 homers, 281. That's pretty damn good. I'm not going to lie. I wonder what his defensive, I doubt the Mets.
He's an average defender. Yeah.
I doubt the Mets, Dan, are going to sign a first baseman if Alonso's back. Actually, he's a great defender. 89th percentile on OAA for first baseman.
Yeah, you bring in a first baseman that's defensive first to couple, right? So it'd be an O'Hearn, it would be a Ty France, it would be a Dom Smith.
Thanks again, John.
Thanks, John. That's who you bring in to kind of counteract Pete. If you have Pete here and you want to make up for his defense, there's some marginal first baseman that you can go out and get that could help solve that for this team. If you lose Pete, you run into a lot of issues very quickly because Vientos could be your first baseman. Bellinger, if you bring him in, he doesn't really want to play first. And that's definitely something.
Yeah, dude, I heard that in your show earlier today. Was there a report on that, or is that just like known?
I think from Yankee side. I think they asked him at some point this past year, and he commented like, oh, yeah, I like first base, but it's not my preferred position or something like that. So there is something there. I think he'd be fine if we give him $160 million over 5 years. I don't think he's going to really complain. Lane Kiffin to LSU, breaking news there. Very interesting. But yeah, you want to have defensive protection for Pete, and also quickly on the Kwan thing, and even Ryan O'Hearn, if we're being honest. Lefties. People think the Mets have too many lefties. Well, think about what's happening in real time. Jesse Winker's not going to be back next year. At least I don't think they're going to bring him back.
No way.
Brandon Nimmo is traded. Jeff McNeil is very close to being traded. That's 3 lefties out of the equation. You can afford to bring in a Kwan, and you can afford to maybe bring in a Tucker. It'll all balance out.
Also, Dan, you got to realize when you're bringing a guy like Tucker, well, I wonder what are his splits? Do we know?
Off the top of my head, no. I'll look that up.
While you're looking that up, I want to get to a quick chat really quick. I believe this is Jean. I saw that earlier because I like this point that she made. Something we've been talking about for a while, Dan. I would love to see someone with a big stick behind Pete Alonso. They moved Pete out of third when he was having a crazy super start to get Soto going. That worked for Soto. Pete's turn. I've been saying that for a while. That's why I am totally in favor. If you bring back Pete, I'm still open to Bellinger. If he wants to play the outfield, guys, he's an amazing defender. An actual bat that's behind Pete for once. I mean, let's be honest. If you could somehow extend the lineup, get a real leadoff hitter. You want to tell me Kwan's going to be in here? You want Bellinger in left? I don't know. I don't know if that would actually work. But having a real leadoff hitter in here, maybe it's Simeon. I don't know. But they got to get a real leadoff hitter in here. Have Lindor be second, Soto third, Pete 4, and get an actual bat behind Pete Alonso. The fact he did what he did last year, Dan, with no protection, because teams are still walking Soto time and time again. When Pete's behind him, it didn't matter. I've been saying that for a while. That's a great point right there. Something that I would like for the Mets to do.
And this is why you bring in a Kyle Tucker. So I'm just going to share this screen real quick. This is what you're looking at with the splits. This is why David Stearns, there's been some rumors between some potential links. So look at him as a lefty. Think about it. Tucker's a lefty on lefty. He has a 134 WRC plus versus
that's crazy.
Versus righties 137. So you're looking at yeah, he has even splits.
Same thing with Soto. Soto's like right there too. That's why you got to be careful when you're saying, well, lefty. You could hit Soto and Tucker back to back if you really wanted. You could have your lineup be Lindor, Soto, Tucker, Alonso easily. Matter of fact, I'm telling you right now, Soto's not an automatic walk with a guy like Kyle Tucker behind him. And I don't think he should be with Pete, but maybe if Pete gets off to another hot start the way he did last year, maybe teams will finally start to recognize the damage that he could do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's get to a couple more here. I'm enjoying this. I appreciate all you guys in here. Please like. If it's your first time in here, consider subscribing and becoming a member. As you can see, 90% of the chats we're getting to are people who are members. It's an ever-growing community, and it's the best way to support the channel. With that said, Burns says, between Metcast Lives and Dance Spaces, I can honestly say you two are how I get my Mets coverage. That means the world, my friend. Who's Burns?
Yeah, okay. Jimmy Burns. Yep. From the Atlanta area. So Jimmy always gives us the scoop down there and what the Braves fans are thinking. So I appreciate that.
I want to look at I put a poll out there. That's why I had my iPad here earlier. I was trying to look at it. My poll earlier today, and so far we have 138 votes, so a decent amount of votes. And people are siding with Lindor here. Do you blame Lindor for clubhouse issues, or is it a coincidence? A, Lindor's fault. B, not Lindor's fault. C, Soto is at fault. What would you think the breakdown would be there?
Lindor's at fault is the second. Soto, it's not his fault. I would think that's last, and then whatever the other option was would be
How many people you would think would say not Lindor's fault, percentage-wise?
30%.
58% of Mets fans say it's not Lindor's fault. 33%. So 1/3 of voters said that's a lot.
That's fair. That's what I expect, actually. And more fans for Lindor.
You know, just saying it. Just it ain't it ain't just that. But let's keep it going here. We have Andre. Would the Mets consider? No, we got to that. All right, here we go. Met. I'm just gonna call you Met. Metaphonic.
Met
What
fanatic.
will be the big splash at winter meetings this year? I actually think it's going to be a trade that nobody sees coming.
I agree. It's a trade. It'll be Fernando Tatis being dealt
to the New York Mets.
Yeah, right. I think that's the big potential trade that we're seeing. I don't think Tarek Skubal's going to make headlines at the winter meetings. I don't think Joe Ryan would make big headlines at the winter meetings. Freddie Peralta, you're hearing some steam picking up there. I don't think these are big moves. I think the big move to expect is Fernando Tatis, and to expect him to go to a contender. And that would be the Mets. Potentially.
They're not going to trade him to a West Coast team.
No. It would be the Mets and the Yankees both in on that. And they both could
Mets got the prospects. So better believe it.
Yeah, well, I know.
Would you include a Carson Bench for him?
No, I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, I'm going to get a graphic made that says, take the blue and orange goggles off.
I would do Jet Williams and that kind of workaround package before I would entertain Benj. I want to have Benj in this outfield with Tatis. That's the goal. Same way with McLean and Skubal. I'm not trading McLean because I want McLean and Skubal together in the same rotation. I would trade Jet Williams. I would trade Ryan Clifford. I would trade Brandon Sproder, Jonah Tong. I would trade Jack Wenninger. I would trade any of these guys. I'd trade Santucci. I would trade Elian Pena, as crazy as that sounds, for Fernando Tatis. But I'm not giving up Benj or McLean.
Okay. Sean asks, why is San Diego trading Tatis? I'll tell you why. There's a reason why it's out there. And like we always say, where there's smoke, there's fire. And it's very, very rarely wrong. The Padres are probably going up for sale. And when teams go up for sale, what's the first thing ownership does? They cut payroll. And that's the rumors. They're leaking like a sieve money-wise out there in San Diego. They were talking about taking on investors. Doesn't look like that's going to work. There might be a sale of the team. And the owner may not want a massive, $300 million on that contract. And guys, talk about quote-unquote run prevention. Doesn't get any better than Tatis, who just won the Platinum Glove. Guy's the greatest defender in the National League. That's where it's at.
Yeah, and move Soto to left. That's what you do.
And I think Soto would do it. They're pals, liking each other's stuff on Instagram, buddies. If Soto really is about winning, he got his money and he wants to win, that would be the best move for him. But that's all it's going to be for us tonight, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn those notifications on so you know when we go live, so you don't miss any of the New York Mets content that you need to know. Consider becoming a member. Link is in the description. As always, Dan, let's go Mets. Peace out.